Sorry, we're a couple minutes late starting. I had some audio issues. All my sounds were dead. I had to restart my computer. We're back.
That's gonna be the topic of conversation for the first few minutes, at least.
Computer problem. So I'm just booted. That's my it should be black. You shouldn't be able to see anything because I'm literally just getting everything started back up, and we're gonna pull some iRacing footage. There it goes, for y'all to see. But yeah, we're gonna go right into talking about IMS. Was There's nobody watching yet, but there was. I guess we should wait. Let me see if we get anybody on. Where's my Twitter alert thing? Do no, don't start on the HMD. Is the screen share working for you, Darren?
Yeah, screen share is working, and I've got so I can see you loading iRacing right now,
Okay.
and I've got us on Twitch on my own screen share as well. So
Cool.
everybody, we are amateurs at this. So
Yeah, this is still new. I think this is episode 4, maybe. Okay, so now we're good. Yeah, so like Darren said, the topic of conversation initially is going to be what happened at IMS, and we put a lot of work in getting practicing for the week and doing a lot of testing and practice races. Actually, the last practice race, the morning of why didn't I race in mode? What the heck? The last practice race, I finished third, and it was looking really good going into it. Um,
yeah, you'd qualified. They changed um, the weather settings, hadn't they? They tried to make it so that the field will be a bit more spread out. A lot of the practice races on Thursday and early Friday were having a lot of crashes, even at the same, even though there was still a lot of crashes going on in the real race, the official race. They changed they tried to make it a little bit more spread out by adjusting the weather, making it a little bit hotter, getting the track temperature up a little bit, making it a little more greasy, try and make it a little bit more processional, not so much, side by side racing.
yeah.
So that race, you qualified seventh, finished third. We had good strategy. We were all super happy going towards the race, weren't we?
Yeah, it was looking good. And they also just they reduced the tailwind going into one with
That's right. Yeah.
the thinking
Yeah.
that would actually let us run a little bit easier through 1 and 2. Because what was happening was a lot of guys were kind of trying to getting lots of confidence through 3-4 the 10-mile-an-hour headwind, and then trying to run 2x2 through 1 and 2 and pushing up into each other and lots of wrecks, and that was not really good for the show. Um, but yeah, finished third in the last practice race, and going to grid, I got up to last minute bathroom break, which I guess is the lesson here. Just don't take last minute bathroom breaks. But I basically put my headset down on my sim, and it rolled off. And the way the Oculus, I had the first gen Oculus, the CV1 um, headset. Sorry, let me just turn that down. That's really loud.
Anybody doing a race run? You guys want to try like a get together, everybody?
iRacing.
iRacing down.
There we go. Sorry, I was just mentioning earlier. I had to restart my computer because all of our audio decided to not work. So
Right.
we're kind of
It has not been a good week for computers, put it that
no.
way.
So basically, the Oculus headset has a USB connection that goes to the computer and to the headset, and it wiggled loose basically when it fell off of the simulator, and the screen went blank, and we're going to grid, and I put the headset back on, and there's nothing. There's no no video, nothing. I'm like, oh god, what's happening? And to turn it on, you kind of like when you pull the straps, it like boots it up. And so I tried taking it off and putting it back on to see if it just had fallen asleep, and like still blank. And I look at it, there's like a yellow status light that's usually white when it's working. So basically, when the cable came a little loose, it it turned off, and you need to do something called a hot reset, which my limited knowledge with VR, I was using the native Oculus program, and somebody actually on Twitter uh, responded to the post about all this and told me that if you use Steam VR, you get there's an option to actually reset it without turning off the software. But with the Oculus software, you have to basically turn off Oculus, which will then turn off any game or simulation that's running with or running through the headset
Mm.
to then reboot it. The problem with that is that we were on grid.
Yeah.
And that would have closed iRacing, so effectively that would have taken us out of the race anyway. So there was no point in doing that, was there?
Yeah. Yeah, we were trying to figure out, is there a way, an unplug and plug back in of any way to not have to reset? Because as soon as you grid, like you were saying, iRacing, you're done. You can't like exit out and put more fuel in. You can't. They try and officiate everybody in the same way. So as soon as you would have exited out, it would have been game over. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, no good. Not a good start. But maybe do you have any footage of you? Well, you basically
Yeah.
had to run with it on your forehead, didn't
Yeah.
you? That was that you did race and you caught the lead pack. You got the start in 33rd. Um, run trying to watch your one screen monitor with your Oculus on your forehead,
It was
watching
pretty
the big
funny.
screen monitor. Yeah, it wasn't at the time, Dalton.
No, I wasn't at the no, no, I was like,
Oh
I won't say almost in tears, but I was pretty stressed out. I was pretty like, let's try to make this work. So I've just
oh man.
shared my
I was
brow
texting
browser
Nicole's
here.
girlfriend, and like I was like, "Damn, I wish I could have been in the same room." There wouldn't have been anything anybody could have done,
No.
even if we had somebody there.
Okay, so
Uh,
it's still working here. So this is before everything went bad.
yeah, I think we were having warm
There we
up.
go.
There you go. There's Dalton with his Oculus on his forehead
So
in the.
basically, what the headset will do is it will actually repeat one of the lenses on your like real monitor, like in your computer. So I had my monitor, and the way I'll kind of show you this on my webcam. So the way I have this set up is I got my sim there, and then I basically turn this monitor to kind of face the sim while I'm driving, so I can get in the menus and do all that. And I got this little keyboard to help out. So I basically had the one eye view on that monitor and trying to drive with that. But the problem was is like it's like driving with one hand over your eye, and like, you couldn't really see much, and like the situational awareness was pretty bad. I actually took out Elio because I was trying to like we had caught the tail of the pack, and basically I think I just couldn't see to the right of
Yeah,
me.
your situational awareness
It
was
was just
terrible.
gone.
It
Yeah,
was terrible. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do anything. You were trying your hardest to, judge your apexes, and we'd spent weeks, building up inches and inches and inches, like everybody, right? We
yeah.
were trying to get better and better, and really, really, get the straightest line, use all the track, get your vision perfect, use all the road, anything that could have get, because I think the whole field in qualifying was covered by like a tenth of a
Tenth and a
second.
half, a tenth. Yeah,
Oh
and
my God, like 33 guys in a tenth and a half. So any bump, any movement in your steering, we were changing the force feedback settings, weren't we? And
yep.
just trying absolutely everything, like everybody else was, burning fuel. Get it? How much do we do? Do we do 2 laps? Do we do 3 laps? All that
Yeah,
kind of stuff. So now you're going around driving with one eye.
trying to
It was
stay out of the way, and because
yes.
we at this point actually, and I was pretty disappointed because I went in Procreate and drew like a little background, which I mean it's pretty amateur, but this is me with Photoshop. I'm not that good at this stuff. Made a fancy background, and I downloaded the software to get the little marching ants on the track here and the
Hmm.
leaderboard. So we look at the leaderboard. I'm 2 laps down at this point, which isn't terrible. But in a few laps, I think me and Elio ran into each other, and then we were about 6 laps
Hmm.
down. But we've and even off the start, like they grid all the cars on the front straightaway, and then you all go, and I'm like out of my sim, unplugging things, plugging it back in, trying to go, and I can hear them all shouting at me on my headset,
Yeah, your car's stationary
staying
on the
there.
start finish line. We thought for the longest time that
They're
somebody
just gonna boot
somebody had
us.
hit you.
Oh
Uh,
really? from the
Yeah,
outside.
for the longest time, because we didn't know how fast we could be running by yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you thought you maybe had a lot of understeer in the car, like you can see your right foot in the bottom of the screen,
Yeah.
just nailed to the floor.
I think I just
Just
couldn't see because like I remember trying to judge where I was like at the apex. You see there, I'm like miles off of the apex, and I just couldn't really get my turning point right, and I was scrubbing so much speed through the corner. So that whole thing was a bit disappointing. But looked online and gonna try out a Pimax headset for any future races. So gonna upgrade the head mounted device for now. We've had a part failure, so we can have that once, but we got to learn from that mistake,
the,
not
the
let it
the
happen
official
again.
races are all over.
Yeah.
We had a good fun time working with our engineers. I think we're going to do it more. We'll maybe talk about that maybe in the towards the end of the show. We can maybe finish.
Oh, we lost Darren there. While his internet's coming back, if you guys have any questions, type them in the chat box, and he might be calling me on Skype again. Um, what's happening? And yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback. Did you get who all watched the race? It was pretty exciting towards the end there, and everything that was going on. But we were kind of busy with our own issues. Yeah, we have lost Darren. 1 second here. All right, let's call him back. Yeah, basically the end call for us was to basically park it after the second spin, or once we got going, then I spun. Um, we just didn't want to be in a position to ruin anyone's race. At some point, I had let a few of these guys by that are ahead of us, Harvey and those guys, and I just really didn't want to affect anyone else's race, given that our day was over. Darren's not online. Let me shoot him a text. Something's going on here. And that was a pretty hard call to make, but that's just one of those things where sometimes it's just not your day, and you've just got to know when it's time to park it. It's better to leave with your integrity and not take out the leaders, and then everyone's getting mad at you on Twitter. No one wants that. Uh, Text Aaron. What happened? Question. So we're still riding along, just watching the RTI guys at Gateway. What'd you miss? Atlantic, you didn't miss a whole lot. We had some technical issues actually at the start of this podcast. My audio, my computer wasn't working. I had to reboot it, so we got started a little bit late. We were basically just talking about um, what happened with the headset. To kind of summarize, my headset rolled off the sim and the plug came disconnected before the start, and I couldn't reset it without closing iRacing. So I basically, you can see on the bottom left here in this screen that I tried to run with my um, headset actually perched on my forehead and using the monitor, but that proved to be pretty difficult, and we ended up parking it. So that's basically what you missed. I don't know what happened to Darren. Darren's not online. Okay, well, we'll just keep going. So moving on from that, it was great to get the experience to be racing with these guys at IMS. I think the thing we wanted to actually talk about next is to go over the simulator and everything. But Darren's got his own simulator facility in Indianapolis, so he's an expert on that. I want to have his kind of take on it. So let's talk about um, the series as a whole. I thought it was a really fun. Um, Sorry, let me just close Skype. I thought it was a great opportunity for all of us to get to race and bring some live sports content to you all. It was pretty exciting. It was definitely new for me. I haven't done a whole lot of iRacing. I did one 24-hour iRacing race years ago with Darren and some other drivers at his facility, Advanced Motorsports. We actually drove for 24 hours. We had, we did driver changes just like the real thing, and But aside from that, I mean, I think I got my iRacing account in 2012, the fall of yeah, no, fall of 2011 actually, because it was the year I went to university, and just did a little bit then, but I really kind of forgot about it. Oh, hold on one sec. Hey. Oh no! All right, I'll keep going on my own. Or wait. Okay, let me know. Okay, Darren just gave me a call. His internet is out. I don't know what happened. So let me just get the Skype thing out of there so it's not in your way. Okay, we got rid of his screen. So Darren will call us back if he can figure out his internet. Maybe he has to reset his router or something. This has really been the theme of this week is hardware and software issues, I guess. Where was iRacing? So I kind of came into this as more or less a rookie in iRacing, as I'll be a sort of a rookie in IndyCar once we get going again. But yeah, it was great. This race at Indy was the last race. Murphy Copper. That's going to be the end of it for the official IndyCar races for the IndyCar Challenge. That's basically wrapping it up. We're moving into some exciting content that we're going to be bringing everyone in May. But as far as official IndyCar iRacing, that's it. But I'll still be doing. There's the Elite Racing Series, which has most of the IndyCar field is active in that, and they've been very generous to open it up for us to be able to compete. And we'll be doing. I think it's every Sunday night. There's a race, and those are mostly ovals, but some other fun tracks. I think we're talking about going to Monza. Or, I don't know if they've released their schedule yet, but there'll be some you know fun, cool tracks that we get to do with that. And then I'm actually doing a video series with the STEM organization that I work with, 1080 Education, to do basically an e-learning series for their students, where we're going to be pulling data and kind of content out of the iRacing races and applying that to like a high school, middle school level e-learning series for science and math. Oh, Aaron's back. Hold on, let's bring him back in. Hey, can you hear me? Sorry, we're diagnosing this on the fly. Let's bring Darren's Skype back in. Hey, unmute. Nope, nothing. Poor network connection. Okay, Darren's still not a thing. Let's see if he calls us back. Do I think it'll help? Do you think it will help the drivers on a whole? I think so. I think this was overall a positive experience for us. Funny picture of Darren there on my Skype. So yeah, I think the iRacing, especially for the rookies coming in, it's not the real thing, but it's a great way to get to learn how guys. Yeah, he's trying to call me. You got me? There he is. Okay, Darren's back.
Sorry. Oh
One
my
sec.
goodness. Are we still going?
We're still going. I was trying to fill the time. All right, Darren's back. What happened?
Sorry about that, everybody. If
One of
it's
your
not
dogs
Dalton having
pull
problems, having problems.
yeah, one of the dogs pull the router power cable out or something.
Probably one of the kids playing Fortnite too much. Maybe that's probably what it is.
Sure, I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to that right now. Right, everyone's stuck at home with
Yes,
their kids.
get them back to school or playing baseball.
So basically, we were
Oh.
we were just to bring you back. So we were talking about I talked a little bit about the I races we've done in the past, and the 24-hour thing we did with you. Um, 3 or 4 years ago now, 3 years ago probably, and just kind of how that series or how this series has been great for the drivers to get to compete with each other. It's not the real thing, but you're still on track competing with we got Karam, Andretti, Ferrucci, Herta, all those guys you see on the timing board there. These are all real IndyCar competitors, so it's very valuable for us to have that experience. I think as rookies going into it, and to get feedback, both positive and negative, on the fly, especially from Will.
Yeah.
Still there?
I've lost. Yeah, I'm still here. No, I think you're absolutely right. There was a lot going on. Um, can you still hear me? I don't have
Yep.
much audio or video on my side. You got me?
Yep. I can still hear you, and the screen
All
shows that
right,
you were.
perfect. No, I was just saying. There we go. I restarted my computer. Everything's firing back up. There we go. We get it, everything. So, no, I think there was a lot of conversations after this weekend with the controversy at the end of the race with regards to how it finished. How serious drivers were taking it. And we talked about it, didn't we? After the series, after the race, maybe a day after the race, after we calmed down. Um, it was, certain people were taking it super seriously and spending 20 hours a day on the simulator and didn't really have anything else to do. Other guys were taking it extremely serious like we were, and spending several hours a day every day involving engineers, getting a team involved. Um, and then there were guys that weren't really taking it serious. And I think the problem was, that there was very little officiating, and there was that spread of, there was no consequence, right? For the guys that were taking it super seriously, trying to make a name for themselves. Um, the Stephen Wilson, James Davidson, those types of guys that were trying to get in the field, taking it super serious, and then others that weren't particularly taking it too seriously. We spent a lot of time, yourself more than me, uh, but obviously we dedicated a lot of time to this, and we put a lot of thought and effort into it. We took it seriously, didn't we?
Yeah, and well, and just to give an example, leading up to Indy, I think I did at least 40 qualifying runs, just because
Yeah.
it was so to be so precise, like playing with the force feedback, how much fuel we burn in pit lane, how much we don't burn in pit lane because you heat the motor up and it gets slower, stuff like that. Like, do you could go do a slow lap and then one fly? Because it's not like the real qualifying where you have average of 4 laps. It's just the one lap. So
Mm.
it's like you can tool around in second gear for 2 laps and then go for your last two. But if I get to that one fast lap, that's what you need. So we were just playing with that kind of stuff, and I think James had a good point that Hinchcliffe. There was a racer article where they talked about this last race and the whole series, and he basically said it's like you either have to everyone has to take it seriously, or it has to be lighthearted and fun. And I think
Mm.
the spread of people kind of doing it on either end of the spectrum, it might have been a bit of an issue. I think, like I said, we were taking it pretty seriously, maybe not going all out because like real lives, and I have my dog and girlfriend Nicole, and just like we just moved into a house, so like doing yard work and stuff, right? Like you can't spend 20 hours a day on this thing. But we were,
Well, you
meh,
can. I think that's the problem. And
yeah,
what you were just saying there, Dalton, right? With regards to, we did, 20, 30 qualifying runs.
yeah,
I mean, you don't get to do that in real life.
no,
You don't get 20 or 30 sets of new tires like these, like on iRacing. You pit, you press reset, and you go for another qualifying run. You crash, okay, you come back to the pits, and you put another set of tires on, you get a brand new car, and off you go again for another qualifying run on another set of tires. And you could literally do that all day, every day until you're done. There's no budget restraints on new tires. There's no budget restraints on crashing. So the more time you spend on this, crash, 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 and bring it back. You normally go the other way, don't you? You
hmm
normally go up, 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 and faster, faster, faster until you nearly wreck, and hope you don't wreck, and kind of get as close to that as possible. Whereas nearly in iRacing, you wreck, 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 and come back from that,
yeah,
because there's no consequences, and you can just do whatever you want.
yeah,
So a lot of guys were doing that, weren't they? They were just doing a million qualifying runs and just going crazy at it. And then there was the other side that weren't taking it
Yeah,
serious.
and I think having that discrepancy is going to frustrate. It's like on both sides, but like the guys that are just having fun and don't like, I won't say they don't care, but they're like they're more lighthearted, and
Mhm.
for them the experience that we're trying to bring is more like joking around and having a good time as opposed to like a serious 100% real racing product like it would be in real life. I think like those guys are going to get frustrated at the guys that are taking it seriously because it's not fun, and then whereas the guys that are taking it seriously are getting frustrated at the guys that aren't because they're not taking it seriously. So it's kind of, you know, it's a bit of a tough place to be in. But overall, I don't want to give the impression that it wasn't a good thing. I think the series was great. Um, and it was a really good experience for me. I had a great time racing against the real IndyCar field that we're going to be racing against once
Yeah.
we go back racing in a month or so is the plan right now. Um, so overall, I was pretty happy. Sun Surfer 00. Why did they not run rows of three for the start? So I think that's basically just a software limitation. I think like stuff like the pace car speed and the setup off the start is just hard coded into iRacing, and from what they
For
told
every
us,
for
like
every
for like
class.
everyone, so it's like it just
Yeah.
wouldn't be feasible. I think it'd probably be one of those things where if they changed it, it would then all the starts for all the races would be free wide. I mean, maybe I could be wrong on that statement, but I
Yeah.
think
I
it
think
just
you're right.
wasn't a
Yeah.
feasible change given the time frame. And I think we were crashing enough as it was, so it probably wouldn't have helped the situation. And like stuff like the pace car speed, like we were complaining so much on the back end about like because the pace car in the software runs at 45 miles an hour. So that's about the time where we quit on the replay there. Um,
Oh, it's okay.
so we were trying to, like, can we bump the pace car speed up to like on a real oval? It's what 70 miles an hour, 90 miles an
Yeah,
hour.
nearly 100, I think,
Yeah,
which is about its first gear speed, right? I think
yeah.
so. It's about 100 miles an hour. Yeah.
But they basically said it's like you have no idea how much work it would be for us to, because that was like probably one of the first things they coded when they created the software. It's like just to go back
Hmm.
through all that legacy code and like reprogram that would have been so much more work than you'd think. And we were just like, yeah, fair enough. Atlantic Cat will gives feedback other than calling people wankers. I think in the moment, most of what he says is like wanker, but for the even like there was one point where it's like, if you were watching the races, there was a lot of swerving and like not staying in your lane, um, at Indy and Motegi, and I think in a practice race, I think someone checked up and I kind of darted to the, to the, to the left, and he was like, "Oh, Kellett, you're like weaving around like an idiot or something," and it was like, "Yeah, fair enough." It was like that's good feedback to get. It's something you might not think about, and it's a simulator, so you're more likely to do something that you wouldn't do in real life. I think in
Yeah, I
real
think you're a
life,
bit more aggressive, aren't you? With the steering in the simulator than you
yeah,
are in real life. You don't have the feeling of the weight of the car, the grip of the car so much, the G inside your body, and that's part of the problem with the simulator. We love the simulator for practicing and engraving, technique, right? We
yeah,
work a lot on technique that we maybe want to work on from what we felt from the last race or the last test. We'll take that to the simulator and try to ingrain it into you, don't we?
yeah,
Whereas racing, there's just so many other variables. Like we've got, like wrecking. You can see them here in front of you and everything. It's just not it. That stuff's not real enough
no,
to to make it, you know, real.
yeah. But it definitely got real tempers and real emotions, as we saw, which for better or worse, I think this was kind of like to wrap up this sort of comment on the whole series. I think the best thing for me out of all this is that it kind of, it's you're used to seeing like me with this guy on, right? And you the only interviews you get are either after a good result or after a crash, and it's like you get those highs and lows of emotions in the ad track interviews,
True
but you don't get to see
personality,
like
right?
who we are unless you're unless you're really you're following us on social media and like you kind of see that side of it. But for most people, it's like they just see the cars and the drivers, whereas you got to hear what we're saying in the cars, watch live streams like mine and Connor's and Scott's and all those guys, and I think that was the coolest thing out of this, and think it'd be a lost opportunity if we don't have like a winter off-season iRacing IndyCar sort of league thing going forward because I think for the fans this was a really fun experience and for us too, you know.
I couldn't agree more. The 6 weeks, I think somebody said it. I think your buddy Tim Hooray, the journalist up in Canada, said, you know, this was 6 weeks of racing, six events. There was going to be, it was going to be, something was going to happen about it, and it was exciting. There was talking points the whole time. And even down to the last race, the last lap, the last 100 meters, there was talking points. But we took it, we did it seriously. We took it seriously. We even finished and called it quits, didn't we, on this race, saying we didn't want to get in the way of anybody. That wasn't what we could have stayed out, and you could have tooled around with the Oculus on your forehead, and probably picked up 10, 15 places from people wrecking out, but you would have probably got in the way several
Yeah,
times of the leaders and maybe influenced their races in a negative
exactly.
way, which we didn't want to do.
No,
And
and what kind of made the decision for me on that was that when we were talking about making that call, it was like at the time I think just with like the compromised view and not being able to see, I think we were like 3 seconds off per lap or 2 seconds off a lap,
yeah,
and it's like if you were that
couldn't
slow in
believe.
real life, you would get parked anyway, you know.
Yeah,
So
they
it's
probably
like
the officials will black flag you, wouldn't they? They would say
yeah,
you don't, you're going to get in the way, put it in the pit lane, and there
yeah,
was no. That's what a lot of problem was with regards to the wrecks that are kind of going on in front of us here. There was no consequences for anybody. We were our own officials,
yeah,
and maybe if we do a series after in the winter maybe or something like that, which I seriously think would be great as well, because this got a lot of attention, and this is maybe the way the world's going for the foreseeable future. But we can perfect it,
yeah,
right? I think or we can at least try and make it better. I think the first thing is probably getting a little bit of officials there, and getting a bit
yeah.
more rules involved.
Yeah, and JR had a great sort of Jerry Hildebrand, one of the other drivers, had a great
Mhm.
sort of what's it called thread on his Twitter thing about his thoughts. 'Cause I I don't think he actually raced in any. No, he didn't partake in any of the races, but he basically said it's like this is everyone's first attempt at an esports online racing
Yes.
thing, and there's bound to be mistakes and good things and bad things to come out of it. But we should really look at this, the whole series, and uh, you know, events that happened in every race. Uh, just take it as a learning experience and do it better going forward. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's like we learned a lot
Yep.
doing this, but we'll definitely next time it happens, it's going to be done better for sure. Well, not done better, but it's going to be improved upon. It's an iterative
Yes.
process.
Yeah, for sure,
Um,
for sure. And a lot of the iRacing people as well, they had their own opinions, of course, as well. And
mhm.
iRacing doesn't want to look bad, because it's a very good community of people that are abide by rules. This was a private league, a private forum, a private you know way of going. This is nothing really to do with iRacing.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's its own little competition that and
exactly.
we basically kind of landed in this space of esports without it like without any understanding of it for the most apart from Sage and Santino who do this all the time
Yes.
and Lando. I think Lando has like 1,200 I races starts or something. It's like
Yeah,
wow,
he's done a lot
so
more than
it's
you
a
on this, for
lot.
sure.
So like those guys get it, like they get this space, and or like Connor with Twitch, and like we're all new to this platform.
Yeah,
Whereas
look at us tonight.
some,
Yeah.
some guys like, have a lot of experience with this, so it's we're all still learning. And that's all we can ask is that, that next time we're going to do it better. And
Yep.
I think it'll just oh, that's a big crash. Just get and it'll just keep improving. So here's an example of something that you would never do in real life, right? Someone spins in front of you in iRacing. It's like you just keep your foot to the floor and you're like, chicane. Like in real life, you'd be slowing down big time for
Yeah.
something like that. Like you're not just going to keep it wooded and go through it. That's not usually how it works. Looking at a couple.
They really struggle on. I think this is one area that iRacing needs to work really hard on. Is how those cars. There's been some really great,
Correct.
funny posts of cars going to outer space,
Yeah.
and the crashes aren't realistic enough. So, like I was spotting for you, right? I don't
Mm,
spot it for you in real life, but you know, I was spotting for you in this format, and it was very difficult to understand like where the cars are going to end up because the inertia, the way the cars crashed, they just like bounced around and went into orbit, and it was difficult to tell you where to go. There was lots
yeah.
of time to go left, right, oh straight, go, oh
Center.
good luck,
Yeah.
type
Like,
of
there
thing.
was there was some really funny pictures. I think Graham was like at the top of the pylon almost, and the little subtitle said like from the in-game spotter. It said clear all around. It's like yeah, no, no duh.
Yeah,
He's
he's
clear all around.
500 yards up,
He's
up
out of
in
the
the air.
park.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's kind of difficult, isn't it?
yeah,
So, but maybe next time we need to go by the full official iRacing rules and have them officiate the yellow flags.
yeah,
They didn't really want so many yellow flags, I don't think, because I think but if we'd have done the practice races with the full iRacing rules, when somebody hits the wall, the yellow flag comes out. That's kind of how it
yeah.
happens in real
Real
life.
life, yeah,
We didn't want the IndyCar people and the broadcast didn't really want every time somebody wrecked, which was pretty often,
yeah,
a yellow flag to come out and stop the flow of the race. So they let us do kind of whatever we wanted, which was probably not the best thing, you know, because people like, the
just making
yellow
silly
car.
moves and stuff.
Yeah, silly
Yeah,
moves coming out. I'm not going to name names, but the guys that were disrespectful coming out of the pits and trying to slow the leaders down on the last lap. That wouldn't have been allowed to happen even in iRacing
yeah,
if it was officially run. So we got a couple of questions, Dalton. I think
yeah.
so.
So yeah, at Atlantic Cat, I'm glad you got insight into kind of who we are. So what did you learn about some of the other guys other than the fact that Will gets heated when stuff goes wrong? Um, yeah, and I do agree. I think that was that was probably the right call to park it. It just
Yeah.
the amount that we could have gained really didn't outweigh the risk of ruining someone else's race. Given that we were 6 laps down or so when we parked it.
Yeah. When we were 2 laps down,
Yeah, I was like,
though,
oh, maybe this might work.
we were we were working our strategy. Daniele and I and you, we were all working hard. Of like, okay, if we get a yellow, we can stay out and try and get 1 lap back, and then we can try and work, and then we might get lucky and get that second lap back. 2 laps we weren't too bad, but six.
Yeah,
It was kind of game over, wasn't it?
yeah.
So, but if there was one more iRace, Dalton, what track would you like to run on? Sun Surfer,
That's a
he's asking. Come on,
double
you, you
zero.
you haven't raced as far and wide as I have, so I've got some good comments on that one. But what would you like to race on?
So I guess if we restricted to tracks that I've actually driven on, I would say Mosport would probably be my
All
dream
right,
track. That's a classic. It's just about an hour and a half east of Toronto, and
home
where I'm
track.
from, home track is where I got my start racing at the time in the Ontario Formula Ford Championship. Like basically an F1600 with no wings, a low milk car. It hosted F1 races in the 60s, maybe early
Yeah.
70s, but really mega elevation changes, really short. It'd probably be under a minute lap in
Oh
an
yeah,
IndyCar.
super
I think
fast.
in the LMP2 car, which we raced there last year, it was just
It's
over a
super
minute
fast.
or
Yeah,
58 seconds or something. So it'd be a fast lap, but I think to really open it up to anywhere, I think for the show or just for the novelty of it, I think it would have been really cool to see us race at Bathurst, Mount Panorama, which probably wouldn't be realistic, but it'd be really neat just to see how that would play out. I don't know. What do you
I think
think, Darren?
I think you need body work to drive that track. You
Probably.
bounce off the walls, don't you, coming down the hill and everything. So
It's
one
like one of
track
those slot machines, like where the ball goes down and it drops
yeah.
down there.
I have never driven it. I've only driven Surface Paradise in a Champ Car a couple of years in Australia. But for me, I think Spa-Francorchamps, Silverstone. What I would class as my home Grand Prix track. Uh, you know, I think if we could do Macau. I know somebody's
Mm.
modelled Macau. The street circuit that Formula 3 race at every year, like a world championship race. I love that one. I'm a bit biased seeing as I won it
Yep.
back in the day, but it is a beautiful track. Super long straights. You can run a super trimmed out setup, like no downforce for straight line speed, and set a fast time. And you can actually run a super high downforce setup and get a super fast lap time because you're quick on the rest of the track.
Yeah.
It's pretty special. But there's a lot of good ones out there, and I hope we get to see him, and maybe even you, Dalton. I'm wearing. Have you known? If you notice, I'm wearing your PR1 Matheson
Oh yeah.
LMP2 race shirt tonight. I thought I'd try and wear something different every night in
Yeah.
my
There you go.
English.
Your cap. Yeah, so if anyone's watching that doesn't know, last year I had the opportunity to do 3 IMSA races with PR1 in their LMP2 car as a sort of a co-driver for Matt McMurray, who was running the full season, and we won all 3 races that I entered in, and they pretty much swept last year. They were on fire. But that was a great opportunity and really fun car. My second time in a prototype because I tested an LMP3 car earlier in the year last year.
Mm-hmm.
But it is funny when you look at those cars from the outside, you think because it's like you're used to looking at like a road car, and you think the windscreen is the same size as the windscreen on your road car, but it's not. It's literally like I'm trying to put my hands in front of the camera. It's like this big, right? It's like if you see a picture with so you can see the guy's helmet, it's almost comical, like how big the helmet is in the windscreen. Like
It's
they're
more
not big
like
cars.
yellow screen,
Yeah,
right?
it's not much
It's
bigger than that.
those cars, this is why we did it, right? If we want to talk about that a little bit, for
Hmm.
just put touch on that quickly. We had a big break. What was it, April, May, maybe June? We had like a
Before
month
Toronto, I
break.
think. Yeah,
Yeah. So we
late
said,
May,
okay,
early June.
let's practice some. Let's see what else other cars we can get in. We weren't allowed to test the Indy Lights car, so the LMP3 was something similar in downforce. So you got a couple of days running in that, and it was a good car to drive. You learned a lot. You got a lot of laps, a lot of downforce. So
Yep.
we said, okay, well maybe we need to do some races, and the LMP2 was even better and closer, nearly identical lap times, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
think Road America, we were like within seconds of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a great opportunity to get to run with those guys. Basically, it kind of was a good scenario where one of their drivers had an opportunity to race in
Mm,
WEC, and there was a spot open, and I was looking to do some races, so we had kind of a win-win there for both of us, and that was a lot of fun.
yeah.
But yeah, and I think you know, kind of we've sort of
Yeah.
talked about our experience with the iRacing series. The one thing I did want to do for this episode, which if you'll let me, I'll make my camera a little bigger so it's easier to see. I wanted to kind of show my sim setup a bit better, which I've kind of
Yeah.
showed a bit, but I'll grab the webcam and drop it and break something else. Um,
Don't break it. Don't go offline.
no, so basically this is kind of, oh god, my wire's stuck. There we go. Um, so this is basically it, and it's a frame with a racing seat and a platform down there for the pedals. The seat can move back and forth and tilt like to set more of a GT or laid back a bit. And I got a Fanatec Fanatic. I don't know if it's is it Fanatec or Fanatic. I'm not really sure.
I think it's Fanatec,
I feel
I
like
believe.
Fanatec sounds cooler. That's so I'm gonna
Yeah.
call it Fanatec.
Let's call it that.
So this is called a direct drive unit. So basically, this is like an industrial inside this box is an industrial um, DC motor that just the spindle comes out here and the wheels attached directly to it. There's no belt system, there's no gear system, so you're feeling exactly basically the torque that the motor's putting out, which means it's really high fidelity and the force feedback's really good. I think this thing can put out 25 newton meters of torque, which on this little wheel is pretty high. You can
It's probably more. It's probably more than
the real car.
an actual IndyCar.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, if you cranked that thing up to full power, and you cranked up the simulator to full power, it would be a full on workout, right?
Yeah, it really would. Um, and so this whole, and then here I've got the SimCraft Tilton two pedal setup with the throttle and brake, and that's got basically a cantilevered. You can see that silver bar behind the brake pedal is a cantilevered sort of Wheatstone bridge load cell setup, and then just like a rotary potentiometer on the throttle for your throttle sensor. So really nice quality set of pedals there. Which for me, the pedals are honestly more important than the
Yeah,
feedback that you get from the wheel, because like a lot of the lap time comes from how you come off the brakes and getting on the throttle. So I
yeah.
think if you're going to spend your money on a sim setup, definitely focus on pedals, but before you focus on a force feedback unit.
And
That's my
make sure it's a
advice.
load cell, right, Dalton?
Yeah,
The
the
load,
load
the
cell is really
loads.
important.
Yeah, you don't want anything that's just on or very soft, or you can't adjust how stiff it is. You could see there on Dalton's rig, his how he's got his pedals bolted down to the floor, has got to be very solid. You'll actually see a lot of guys and racing boots as well. You can see a little bit on the camera here with your racing boots. The sole of the boots are very thin, and some guys on sim racing use just no shoes, no boots, no nothing, just socks, right? You could
Yep.
see with Lando Norris, he would just be using socks because you're not going to press the brake pedal as hard as you are in the real car, but you
No.
want the feel. um, and that's one thing that you want to really get from your pedal setup. The throttle's great. You want to work with the throw. How much is 0 to full throttle, how long it takes you to get to full throttle. Play around with that a little bit. But the big thing is that brake pedal, like Don was saying. You want to really work on how stiff it is or how soft it is, so you can modulate that brake pressure, because that's where the majority, if not all, the speed is, even in the real car, is braking down to that apex.
Yeah, 100%. And so just looking at some questions, why didn't I? So it's, yeah, why didn't I use the iAdvance Sim, which is a facility that Darren owns. But basically, what happened is, the when this all started, obviously due to COVID-19, we didn't know kind of what the restrictions were going to be. So I thought it was prudent that if they had a very and at the time they hadn't mandated a stay-at-home order, but I kind of thought that was in the cards, so I went
Yep.
out and basically partnered with Racecraft one of the simulator supply companies in town. They basically sell this kit. I you um, was sponsored this frame from them to set the whole simulator up, and it you know I wanted to have a rig at home to use in case there was a lockdown, in which case we weren't able to, leave our homes
Hmm.
unless to go get groceries or go to the hardware store or other essential businesses. So it was mainly just thinking ahead in terms of, what if we're in a situation where I can't get to Darren Simulator, and
Right.
I just wanted to have something at home. And given the amount of time that we knew we'd be practicing, it made
That was what
it
I was
made
going to
more
say, Dalton, right?
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I'm gonna go spend 12 hours over at your place, and you're gonna go over and spend 12 hours when the kids are home from school, and I've got
Yeah.
Poppy here. You just for a 2-hour session a couple times a week, that's fine. But to
Uh,
really be doing tons and tons of laps, like it helps to have a setup. here at home.
Yeah,
Um,
and there was lots of times when you were on at midnight
yeah,
or late or later even, and some of these other guys they were running till 1 2 o'clock in the morning.
yeah,
You didn't want to be going to my simulator 30 minutes away from home, putting the alarm code in or whatever. But
yeah.
it was mainly the COVID uh,
Situation,
situation,
yeah.
right? And which
Just wanted to respect that,
exactly.
stay-at-home order that the governor's issued. It felt it was best to, even if I knew I'd be the only person in that building, I just didn't want to be somewhere where I didn't have a reason to be basically. So, and just to quickly go through this basically we've got the Fanatec Formula V2 wheel, I think it's called. It's got a bunch of different click buttons, which you can actually put different caps on. I thought this was funny. For push to pass, I put a horn because there wasn't like a go fast symbol, but I thought the horn was kind of funny because we don't actually have a horn in our car, but I figured push to pass was the closest thing.
Yeah.
Um, the pit lane speed here. It's got like a hat switch, like a castle switch with a rotary for kind of navigating menus, different rotaries, different modes. So lots of stuff you can do there. I have brake bias bound to this rotary here, and it's got actually there was an up from Fanatec an upgraded paddle and clutch kit. So it's got the upper paddles which you can bind to any button you want. These are the ones I was using for shifting, and then twin clutches, which is just like the real IndyCar. We have a clutch on either side of the steering wheel, which is basically because if you have a pit lane on the left side or the right side, you're either going to be right hand or left hand down, leaving the box, and you need to have
And that
the
was
clutch.
useful. You'd worked on the bite points
Yeah,
and getting out and how you could release out of the pits to get more speed and more
yeah.
time.
And so basically how that works with this thing, there's basically a mode where you can go into like a dual clutch paddle mode where you pull them both in, and then with this rotary you set basically when you drop the right paddle, it'll dump it. Like it's not it's digital, not analog. It'll just drop to a preset number, and you basically just set that number at a clutch release point that is giving you wheel spin, but like not a lot, and then you modulate the rest with the left paddle. Which, yeah, like I said, getting out of the pits was super useful.
Hmm.
Gain a little advantage there if you can get a spot on pit lane. That's always more or less free. So you take that when you can get it.
Absolutely.
So, and that's kind of the overview of my setup. The VR. I've had a lot of questions about the VR, whether that was an advantage or a disadvantage, or I liked it or not. And I really enjoy it. I do a lot of flight sim. I play DCS mainly, a little bit of X Plane. So the VR with that's actually why I got the VR headset in the first place. Just the immersion was so much better than a three screen setup, and just doing like the cost analysis of it, getting three big 4K monitors is probably twice the cost of even the higher end VR headset. So it just made sense to go the
Yeah.
VR route, and the immersion is
Space
so
wise
good.
as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it's like where am I gonna fit it through? It's like the eye advanced sim has a big wraparound monitor, right, or a big wraparound screen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So mine's about 180. It's about 22 feet all the way around with three projectors on it. I want to see my drivers, where they're kind of looking. Whereas with the VR, it's actually probably better for the individual because when you're looking around, you don't quite get to use your pupils as much. When
mhm,
you're kind of leaning into the corner but your eyes are kind of pointing over this way. The VR goes where your head goes, right on with the sensor uh, up in front of you. So I want when I'm coaching, I want to see what the driver's
yeah,
doing. So I want that big screen and see what they're looking at. Whereas, like say, you're in a confined space, you're
yeah,
doing flight simulators, for example, you're looking out over the wings, you're looking for an airport, or I think it's even pretty damn good when you're racing like this. I could see a
yeah.
lot of times on
Looking
your
around,
screen you were looking to the left and how close you were to the guy you were running too wide with, weren't you?
which you can't do in real life. So that's a bit
Oh,
unrealistic. But also in real life, you have at Indy you have two spotters, and they're
yeah.
like really good. You know, this was I think probably your first or second time trying to spot, right? So it's kind of
Yeah,
a
it
new
was. Yeah,
thing.
and this isn't like real spotting either,
No,
right? This is the game side of things, like we were talking about. The One of the biggest points of being a spotter is trying to predict where the wrecks are going to go to help be eyes for you, further down the road,
Hmm.
to give you help of where you need to go. And this is very difficult compared to real life.
Yeah. How many drivers used the VR? Was it driver's choice? Yeah, it was 100% driver's choice. I
Was
think
it?
I was actually the only guy with the VR, um, which was great up until it wasn't, and then it stopped working. But I just shouldn't go to the bathroom. I think that's the takeaway there. Um,
Yeah,
the
I think maybe some of the other guys use VR.
I don't I
Uh,
in the IndyCar league, no one did as
Really
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, there was actually when I was on grid trying to figure it out what was going on. I'll post it on Twitter. There was a funny clip where Connor was like, or like Greg West from iRacing was like, Dalton, are you there? What's going on? Because my car was just parked like on the front straightaway, and like Connor was like, oh, he's using them fancy laser vision goggles. Maybe something went wrong. So Connor got it right. Something did go wrong with the
Yes.
fancy laser vision goggles.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll get it sorted.
Like, does your mind ever momentarily confuse and you try to unbuckle your seatbelt or something like that? Not in the racing sim so much, um, but like when I first started doing the flight sim, I remember like because the plane has a canopy and stuff, and like I remember like it's like you almost want to like put your elbow on it because like you feel so immersed in it, and you kind of move around a bit more. In the car sim, the thing with iRacing, and this isn't really a critique as much as it's just not what they're focusing on because the tire model and the track modeling is so complicated that like that's where a lot of the work is. So the textures and like the visuals aren't where the flight sim textures are so good that you can really forget that you're have the VR things on. Whereas iRacing, it's a little more cartoony, so
Mm.
you don't get that like what's the term willful suspension of disbelief, right? Like when you're watching TV, it's like you don't get that as much because like the graphics just aren't good enough.
No. And
To
your hands don't move, I think, as well, don't, right? I
no,
think if that
I had them set so I could see
was
my hands moving.
Yeah, I think if maybe you had VR, if there was
Yeah,
some way you had sensors in your gloves that you could take your hands off the steering wheel, whereas your hand in iRate like there you could see in your goggles, right? Your
yeah,
hands are always on the steering
yeah.
wheel.
So you just don't quite have that same immersion. Like I
Yeah,
said, I think that their priorities are more on track modeling and like vehicle dynamics and stuff than textures. Again, it's not a critique of iRacing. It's just where their priorities are. I think. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the the sim setup and kind of our thoughts on the iRacing series. Um, one more question: is there
yeah.
iRacing for
Go
F1, and if so, would IndyCar drivers be invited to race? That's a loaded question. Probably not after this last race. I
I
don't know.
don't know.
I'm just kidding.
They maybe want to get us back.
Yeah, there's some
Maybe.
payback. I don't know. I think. Well, first of all, there is. I think the Williams car is in iRacing, but there's
iRacing,
only
yeah,
the Williams car. So, given that there's different manufacturers, I think it wouldn't politically work for them just for all the guys to be racing the Williams car. I feel like Ferrari and those McLaren wouldn't be too thrilled about that.
no,
So no, and what they have been doing is using the F1 2019 or 2020 game to basically run their esports stuff, but not really a lot of the guys have engaged. I think like Nick Latifi did and a few other guys, but
yeah.
maybe six or seven of the
That's a
F1
lot
field
more. That's a lot more. Like we're
or
talking about how
arcade.
realistic iRacing is.
Yeah.
That is a lot more on the gamer side of things, isn't it? So
Yeah. Sun Surfer, would you prefer to set up your own car instead of identical
oh,
setups? And so that's
interesting.
an interesting point. And if we haven't mentioned this, all these setups, because you can change your springs, dampers, downforce, etc. On these cars, we were running fixed setups and mainly just to make it easy so that we weren't going nuts tinkering. And so for the purposes of an IndyCar iRacing series, where there's different levels of experience with the program, I think fixed setups is the way to go.
Yes.
Um, as far as being interested in developing setups with the engineer and work and having stuff to work on, I would love the open setups, but I think there's stuff that doesn't translate from real life to
Yeah.
like if we just took an IndyCar setup and put it into iRacing, it wouldn't be as fast as like a tweaked iRacing setup from guys that are really good at this.
Hmm.
Because there's just like there's a meta game of like stuff that the ways that you can take advantage or not take advantage, but the way that you can you
No,
that
take advantage.
well
Yeah.
just given the way that the cars are modeled and the way the tracks and tires are modeled, the setups are different, and our expertise with the real car wouldn't translate, and it would be it'd be a huge learning curve. So I think it wouldn't work for for an IndyCar iRacing league like we tried to do here.
You'd get probably a even bigger
Yeah,
discrepancy between the guy on pole position and last position. Whereas we were talking, there was with the identical setups, there was probably a tenth and a half between the whole 33 guys on the field. There would have probably been nearly a second, if not more,
yeah,
from the guys that, like you were talking about with Lando, Sage, those kind of Sage races this every night,
yeah. He's on a
and he,
team. He's on like an
yeah,
esports team, so like he would know how to set the car up, whereas we would
yeah.
have no clue, right? We would be well,
But
we would have a clue,
we
but
were pretty excited, weren't we,
yeah,
when this came out, that this was a bigger, more of an opportunity for us to, work with Daniele
yeah,
all the guys at Foyt and work on setup. I mean, it was when you're trying to work on line and steering angle. I mean, like it's like what force feedback system do you have? Do you have
yeah,
Fanatec? Do you have Leo Bodner? Do you have Logitech? What does and how does the game interpret those different things? Whereas when it's a setup, well, maybe now it's a chance for us to be
and more,
smarter than everybody else and
yeah,
work hard and get it good. But they changed that pretty quickly, didn't they?
yeah, yeah. Because and to put this context, like when we found out that we were doing Indy for this last race, initially they told us it was going to be open setups to make it a little more interesting, but then I think they quickly realized that just would make the show probably not as good and be difficult for guys that don't have the experience in iRacing. It's like we would work with our engineers and do our normal process and probably develop a pretty quick car, but we wouldn't like guys like Sage and Santino that do this a lot would just have a setup and then go from there. So they would start at a higher level and just it would go
Yeah,
like that, right? So
yeah,
for a future series, it could be cool. But for the time and place, I think it was the right call to have it be fixed setups. Yeah, I think that's sort of everything we wanted to talk about in this show. We're getting about to an hour, so I don't want to go too long. I think the
yeah. Bit of our longest one, but that probably works well into leading on to what we're going to do in
yeah
the future. Now that the IndyCar official series has finished, we're planning on doing some other races. Maybe still do this every Wednesday. Try and really build this up into when we go into uh, the real back to the real world and do the real racing. We'll try and edit into some actual footage of your real race weekends, right, Dol?
yeah, that's kind of our plan. We're still working through the kind of specifics of that, but I think and then we still have a month, 6 weeks until the next one. So the plan is still to do a weekly show, but
Mm-hmm.
we're still kind of figuring out what we're going to talk about. I think we might look back at some old stuff, go over maybe talk about some of the
Do
old
some
lights
solo work,
races.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then also just doing we might a session with one of our Foyt engineers, like I said, do and actually work on setup, and then kind of talk about not specifics about the real car, but just about how our what our process is, and just kind of give you a glimpse of that. So should be some exciting stuff coming your way. So just make sure to check out mine and Darren's Twitter. I'm probably more active than Darren is on that, but check us
Yeah.
out on Twitter and Instagram. I think mine's at Dalton Kellett or at Dalton underscore Kellett, and that'll sort of be where the updates are for what we're going to be doing here. And
Yep.
as far as Twitch, I will be doing so once my new headset arrives, I will be doing the elite racing leagues. And we might do some fun races. So I'll be twitching, streaming, whatever it's called, those, which will be cool. And I might, once I get my thing up and running, and maybe I'll Twitch some flight sim or Kerbal Space Program or something while we have some time to
Yeah.
kill. So it could be
Do
fun to
do some
watch.
other engineering stuff, some more fun stuff. Yeah, you do the
Yeah,
Kerbal Space Program, right?
yeah,
Which is very engineering and very, more into the fact that your side of the engineering and everything, and you know, the flight sim is pretty damn cool. I might have to come on and be a passenger.
yeah. All right, so
So
thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah, Thursday Night Blunder. I think Stefan did that a couple weeks ago. That looked pretty fun.
maybe
Anyway,
tomorrow night.
yeah.
All right.
Alrighty. Oh yeah, the name of the show. That's a good point, Murphy Copper. So we did hold our Twitter poll, and it is now the D2 Speedcast was the winning entry with 50% of the votes. So thank you
Awesome.
to everyone who put their votes in, and thanks to Frank Kreml. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I don't get your name wrong. Frank Kreml for the winning entry. You're gonna receive a signed visor from Dalton and Darren. So I did message your Facebook. So just respond with an address, and then we'll send it your way. So thanks
All right.
everybody, and we will see you all next week at 8 o'clock on Wednesday.
All right. Thanks, Dalton, and thank you, everybody, and see you next week.